Assalamu alaikum students, this is Farwa Batool, your O-level computer science instructor, and welcome to my channel Learn to Teach. So we have another video here related to pseudocode. In this video we are going to see that how to write pseudocode for conditional statements. So first of all, let me explain you what are conditional statements. We know that a program or something when we do is sequential. It has some order one by one. But if we do something out of order or that is not sequential, why is it so? Because let's suppose we are doing something in which we have some choices to select actions. What it means? It means that let's suppose I have two options. Either I can do one thing, either I can do the second thing. So between the two options, if I have to select one of them, so it means I will be using conditional statements. Let me give you a simple example. Let's suppose a user went to a restaurant. He wants a burger there, but it is the choice of the user. Either he will be adding cheese into it or no cheese. So he has to decide. Depending upon the user's choice, the customer will work. It means the customer is going to have add cheese if the user says, otherwise no cheese if the user says no. So sometimes we choose between the actions depending upon the user's choice, depending upon there can be various things like it can depend upon users input, it can depend upon the values in the variables, or we can also select the actions depending upon some comparisons between the variables, and we can also use some kind of Boolean variables. I'll be explaining you each and every point that I have mentioned here in detail in this video. Okay, before going into the detail, let me tell you that how many conditional statements we have. The first conditional statement that we use is if, then, else, and if conditional statement. And the second one we use is case of, otherwise, end case. So these are the two conditional statements we often use, and there is a big difference between them. I'll explain you this one by one. In this video, let's discuss if, then, else, and if conditional statement in detail. And then in the next video, I'll come over this topic. Case of, otherwise, end case. Okay, now I am going to show you a very simple example of if, then, else, and if statements or conditional statements that is written in your book. Let's just go into it and let me explain you what it is and how it works. Okay, so here we go. I have pasted a simple example for if, then, else, and if conditional statement here. Let me just see it. Okay, if, look at here, if age is less than 18, let's suppose age is a variable that is storing some integer value. And you have to check what is the value of the age. And let's suppose if it is less than 18, then output child. You have to print on the screen child. But if the age is not less than 18, then you will be printing output adult on the screen. What we understand through this small pseudocode is that depending upon the value of the variable, we are deciding between the two actions that what you have to do. So here you have choices. One is this action and the other one is this. You cannot run both of them. You have a choice depending upon the value of the variable that what action is supposed to be done or what value is supposed to be printed as an output. So let's suppose if the value of age is 20. So we know that 20 is not less than 18. So this is going to be false. And remember that when the statement gets false, you will be running the else condition or the else code, the code that is inside else. We will run this. And if, let's suppose, the value of age is not 20, it is 15. So 15, yes, 15 is less than 18. So it means now this age less than 18 becomes true. So when the statement of if becomes true, then you will be running the code of then. So it is very, very important that when you have to run the code of then and when the code of else would be run. So very easy. When, remember that when, if a statement is true, run then code. And when, if a statement is false, we have to run else code. Very easy. Now let's take another example so that this thing will be very, very clear to you. Okay, so here comes another example of if then else. Okay, I have earlier mentioned that if statements can be of different type. Either you can compare the values of the variables, look at here. You can decide, depends upon the user's input. You can decide depending upon the values in the variable. You can decide depending upon the comparisons between the variables. And you can also decide by using a Boolean variable. So let's see what is the meaning of deciding with a Boolean variable. We have already seen this one, value in the variable in this particular example, where the value that is present in the age variable will decide either then will run or either else path will run. Okay. Next, in this example, we will see how we can use a Boolean variable to decide which of these then or else path is going to run. Okay, I have already explained you what is a Boolean variable in my previous video in which we have done the assignment statements. Okay, remember that a Boolean variable is one that stores two values. Found. A found is a Boolean variable. So, found can store only two values. Either the found variable can store true value or either it can store false. Yes. So there are only two values that can be stored in a found variable. So depending upon its value, remember that I have earlier told you if a statement is true, we are going to run then code. Output, your search was successful. It means that if the value of found variable is true, you will be running your search was successful. You will print this on your screen. But if the found variable, the Boolean variable, has a value false in it, so you will move towards the else code and you will be printing your search was unsuccessful. So in this way, we can use a Boolean variable to decide between the actions. Okay, now the next thing is very interesting and very useful. That are the comparison statements. So before going into the code of comparison statements, let me just tell you that what are the comparison operators that you can use with the variables. So let me just quickly add that table in which I have comparison operators from your book. Okay, so here we go. This is table 7.2 in your book, comparison operators. These are the different comparison operators that you can use as your if statements. How you can do that? Let me explain you. Let's suppose I have a variable named score, and there is some number inside that. So let me compare. If score is greater than 100, then you will do something. If it is not, else you will do something. So in this way you can use a greater than operator in your if statement. You can also use the less than operator, depends upon your need, less than 100. Or you can also use the equals to operator by comparing the two values if they are equal or not. Let's suppose if a score is equal to 100, then you are first, otherwise you are not first. Or you can print anything, whatever you want, by comparing the two values. You can also compare two variables instead of a number with a variable. Let's suppose I had score 1 of a student and score 2 of a student, and I'm comparing the scores of two students. So score 1 equals to score 2 means that both are at the same grade or both are at the same position. Otherwise, both are not at the same position. I can also use greater than and equals to. Let's suppose there is a variable named weight. I'm weighting something and I am checking if the weight is greater than and equals to 150. There is a difference between greater than equals to and greater than 150. Greater than 150 means that it will be true if the value is 151, 152 and so on. But it will not be this one. It will not be true if the value is 150 because there is not mentioned equal to. There is only mentioned greater than 150. So if you use this statement will be true when the value is 150 as well, because it is mentioned that equal to 150 and greater than 150. So it will be true when the values are 150, 151, 152 and so on. But in only greater than operator, the values will be true in this case, but not for 150. So remember this difference. Same goes for less than equals to this one. Okay, not equals to this. Not equal. This is another thing that is opposite to equal to. Let's suppose I don't want two values to be equal to do some action. So I can just write down if, let's suppose I want to buy something but I don't have $100. So I can just write down if price is not equal to $100. And also, if you don't want something, maybe you want to add more statement into it. Price must not be equal to $100. Then do this. But if the price is equal to $100, then do the else thing. So in this way, you can use a not equal comparison operator. Now, next thing, these three things are very important: and, or, not. Whenever you are using two comparisons and there is something related between them, or you want to have more than one comparison statements inside your if statement, then you can join them with and, with or, Not can be just used one with only one comparison statement. So let me just give you example of each of these so that you can understand. Okay, if I am writing a statement like if the age is less than 50 and let's suppose height is greater than 15. So if I'm using AND word here, remember that AND comparison operator means that both the statements must be true in order to run the else code. Both statements needs to be true. If one of these is false, then you will move towards the, sorry, I must write then. Then code will run only when both the statements that I have connected with AND operator are true. If one of them is false, you will move towards else code. It's very important. When you need both the statements to be true, then you have to use this AND operator. Otherwise, you can go for else. Or, how can we use or? The same thing, or. If age is less than 50 or height is greater than 15. Remember what is the difference between and or. I have mentioned that when we use and, it means that you must have both these statements true in order to run the code of then. And if one of them, let's suppose height is not greater than 15. So it means this one becomes false. So if one of them is false, you will move towards the else code. But in or, it's not mandatory that both the statements needs to be true. If only one statement out of them is true, you can go to the then code. So it's a difference between and or. In and, both statements needs to be true so that we can run then code. But or, if one of both statements is true, either this one is true or either this one is true, your code of then will run. Or if both are true, then the code can run. But remember that if both are false, then you will be running the code of else. Only if both are false in the case of or. But if any one of them is false in the case of and, any one, then you will be moving towards else code. So this is the difference between and or. In and, both statements needs to be true, and in or, only one can be true in order to run the code of then. Okay. So what about this last comparison operator, that is the not operator? Here. Okay, this not operator can be used if you don't want a statement to be true. Let's suppose if it only work if not, let's suppose a variable positive is equal to, let's suppose a value, a number, we can take a number. If the value of positive equals to 25 and you are using not with it, it means that this statement will be true if the value of positive is not equal to 25. Remember that you have used a not outside of this statement. Not means that whenever the positive variable has a value 25, this whole statement becomes false. Because we don't want a value 25 in the positive variable. Why we don't want it? Because we have used a not outside the statement. So whenever we use not, it means the inside statement must not be equal to 25. Positive must not equal to 25. Then it will become true. Let's suppose it's a positive variable that has a value 100. It means when we see this statement says that positive value not equals to 25. Not equal to. Remember that there is not outside. So if positive is equals to 25 means it must not be equal to 25. Only then code will work. If it is not equal to 25. So look at this. The positive value that I have written here is 100. So 100 means that it will run then code. Why? Because the positive value is not equal to 25. It is equal to 100. And when will this become false? It will become false when the positive value will be equal to 25. Yes, if it is equal to 25, it means that we don't want a positive value to be 25 because we have written not outside. It must not be equal to 25. So, if it equals to 25, so this whole statement becomes false. Okay, so in case of false, we know that the else code will run. This code is going to run. Let me explain you this thing in a more uh, just more clearly with another example. Let's suppose there is a party, and in that party you are not supposed to wear white. You can wear any other color but not white. So what you can do, write down if not the cloth is a variable that has a color stored in it. So let's suppose if the cloth is, let me write correct example spelling here. If the color of the cloth is not white, then you can enter the party. You can just write down output, you are eligible, or you can enter. It's an output message. Just write down output here that you want to print on the screen. And other than that, if it is white, if someone has wore white, then you are not allowed to enter. So it's a simple code when only one thing is not allowed. So you can use this statement, not cloth. If the color of the dress is white, it must not be white to run this code. But if it is white, you are not allowed. So in this way, you can use a not comparison operator. Okay, this is all for today. We have seen so many if then else statements, and I hope that this topic is clear to you. In the next video, we will see the second comparison operator, that is and of, otherwise this one, and case. Thank you so much for watching this video. Stay tuned, stay connected, and do not forget to subscribe the channel. Bye bye.